Hey guys, it's Brian Jodas from Pick Up the Six podcast. Guys, men, listen up. My friends and partners over at ngbn.tv are committed to you in providing content specifically for men and men's mental, physical, and emotional health. We're hosting a groundbreaking virtual conference on January 7th, and I'm personally inviting you to attend. I'll be there hosting the event all day. The conference is called Men Striving to Thriving. This will be a transformative program that will help you make 2023 the best year of your life so far. And it's not just a kick-ass 5-hour conference, it's more. The conference on January 7th will kick off your 8-week journey. So not only will you hear from experts on the 7th, you'll then receive 8 weeks of tailored weekly reinforcement and motivational emails. You'll also get access to 4 coaching sessions, and you'll be invited to an exclusive online community that will have all of the conference and program materials. So, are you willing to start this journey? The entire 8-week program, including the 5-hour virtual conference on January 7th, is only $179. But if you use our exclusive code PICK610, PICKSIX, and the number 10, PICK6 and the number 10, you can register today for only $159. We're saving you money just like that on an amazing program. Go to ngbn.tv/news and you'll see the conference link at the very top. We also have the link to register here in our show notes. Kick off 2023 with 8 weeks that could change your life and join the Men Striving to Thriving movement with ngbn.tv. We first met Eric Hohman on episode 81 when he was running for Congress in Texas. Eric was an Air Force combat controller, and even though he didn't win this round in the political arena, that's not stopping him from finding ways to stay in the fight. We're talking about his dedication to the Special Forces community through the First There Foundation on this episode of Pick Up the Six podcast. Brian Jodas back once again for another episode of Pick Up the Six podcast. Man, so pumped to have Eric back on the show. It feels like it was only yesterday, man. We got to connect for the first time. I went back and looked. It's podcast number 81, bro. And we're like at 130 something now. So it's been a minute, but it's good to see you, dude. How are you?
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. Yeah, you guys have been cooking, man. It's good.
Getting after it a little bit. We're quiet down a little bit, right? End of the year here. Settle on the holidays, right? Relax a little.
Yeah, everybody's on cruise control, I think, till January 15th or so when everybody gets back to work.
We jumped on. I was like, oh man, my man looks like he's getting after it. That sure's got some years and some life to it. What he got on?
Yeah, man. It's got that number 6. It's my dive school t-shirt. Believe it or not, Sophie made some great t-shirts. That should be a plug for those guys. I mean, it's still collar, still good. And I was running around with my dog. I was like, let me throw this thing on, and still good. Still
good after all these years, and you wore the dive
fat, so that's good. Yeah, it's like 2008. So 2008. Shit, that's a long time.
Yep. Shout out to my friends at GoRuck for making this super comfortable hat I'm wearing. The patch, I think I got it like an Academy Sports, but I was like, well, if I'm having Eric on the show, proud Texan for the Gonzales flag, right? If you guys don't know this story, go look it up. Little Gonzales, Texas, in the middle of a battle, the enemy's like, surrender your guns. Give us your cannon. They had this badass cannon, right?
Yeah.
Give us your cannon. And they put up a flag that basically was like, fuck off. Come and take it.
Come get it.
Come and get it.
I wish the US was like that more now.
Well, I'm telling you, man. I think it's come and take it mentality would be all right.
Yeah. I think the US right now is like, we take it instead of come and take it. The US.
We're gonna catch up on a lot of things, man. The last time we talked, you were in the middle of a primary race running for Congress. So I want to hear some lessons learned, right? What you just gathered from that. I know it's probably kicked in. I'll ask you a little bit about it. And then, we're recording this on a day where just like it's a news day where, look, man, Brittany Griner got traded back to America, right? This WNBA basketball player, for a guy that is an arms dealer and basically a warlord. And look, I mean, you know how we roll here, Pick Up the Six. You don't need me to tell you, Eric. We have documented moment after moment where the United States has gone in to get our people. We should, right? We should always go get our people. But I was a little perplexed, man, on a day like today where we trade basically somebody who got caught for doing some stuff she shouldn't have been doing. I get it. For a dude that has freaking aided and abetted an armed terrorist and is a really bad dude who now just goes back onto the Russian streets. It's kind of like, what am I missing here?
I don't know, man. That's the bad part about politics, right? It's just, I'm sure that the guy in charge, some moron told him, "Hey, I think this be really good PR for us." And, because obviously you're terrible pretty much every day. So instead of getting that Marine that's been in prison out there, he takes that one that, hated America, always spoke bad about America. And that's a ridiculous
it's frustrating,
trade.
right? It's just,
No.
and like, I'm not trying to make too big a deal out of it, but from the position I sit, I'm like, I'm going to talk to a guy today who him and his friends have risked life and limb. Some of those, like Mark Forrester, who didn't get to come home, right, to make sure Americans came home. So, man, I'm kind of like, what are we doing sometimes? What are we doing? I don't know.
Circus continues, my friend.
I know. We fight on. We're going to share stories. I want to talk a lot today about First There Foundation, the great work that you guys are doing. We talked a little bit about it before, but want to come back to it, right? And just talk about the amazing work that you're doing for the community of special operators and their families. Before we do that, though, the last time we did talk, man, you were in the middle of running for Congress. Man, I wanted you to get through that. I know a lot of people did. It didn't work out in your favor, and that's life in the political game. So, man, just catch us up to speed a little bit. Lessons learned. Did it kindle up a little fire in you to keep going? What are you thinking?
Yeah, that was a super good experience. It's it keeps you going where whatever you want to do, I think people should just go do. That's definitely what I liked about that whole experience. So politics, I knew it was going to be kind of a tough business to get into, but I followed my heart and I did what I wanted to do, without thinking. And the bad thing is, as it progressed towards the election day and the primaries, the problem is, you have all these trolls, and some of them, they can look up information. I mean, your information's out there. If someone really has the time, they can look up a lot of stuff about you, especially being from the public, being out in the public sector. So it wasn't so much that I was worried about myself, but people were threatening my mom, and they knew where I lived and stuff. And it's and you don't know what they look like. So you could be at a restaurant one day and someone comes and does something, right? So it was maybe a blessing. I still have that itch to maybe do it. So we'll see how 24 comes around.
I figured you did.
Yeah, but we'll see, man. And I enjoy my privacy, but at the same time, if good people don't get in there, then we keep having these goons that run the show. And I mean, look at our country, right? So it just breaks my heart that that's how the country is divided, and you have people that truly just are out for themselves and not really for the American people. So it's too bad.
Yeah, man. And the frustrating part for me and all of probably you guys listening too is out for themselves, like on both sides. I look around sometimes and I'm like, what the hell are we doing? Like, there's got to be some better options in both ways. There's a lot of people that have been in power and leaders of parties for a long, long time, man. Like, they're both probably part of the problem. I'm excited to see people like Morgan Luttrell get in there, join up with other folks that have served, right? That just, man, some return to having more people in those halls that have put the uniform on. I don't think that can be a bad thing.
Yeah, I think that would help our country a lot and perhaps keep us out of some wars that we are so quick to get into. And also, if we are going to war, then let us get in there and get back out, right? There's not this whole long process and, the whole thing with Afghanistan, giving them millions of dollars after we left and starting to negotiations with the Taliban. It just blows my mind. It's all that for nothing. The guys we've lost over there for nothing. So, and granted, we were fighting for each other. So don't take that wrong. It's for nothing, but still
we know your heart. No, we know your heart.
We should have dominated and left. That's how quick it should have been. But
it's one thing for the American president, regardless of political party or persuasion, to say, I take it very serious every time I send our treasure into battle. And they often probably mean it. I think you would mean it more had you been in that position. I don't know. Just those are the things I think about, and you look around, it's just like, sometimes we end up in these high profile races with a couple of duds. I'm like, what? There's millions.
Look at Pennsylvania, right?
Thousands. Look, Dr. Oz, whatever, love him or not, against the freaking baked potato and the guy who won. And like, my dad's a retired 3-star general in Pennsylvania. I'm like, that guy should be the senator in Pennsylvania is
Yeah.
going to be so
Yeah.
pissed at me
That
for
was
saying
pretty
that, bro.
shocking for sure. Pretty shocking, man.
We'll keep doing it, bro. We'll keep sharing
Yeah.
good stories,
Yeah.
right? We'll keep
Yeah.
fighting.
We'll see.
We'll keep plugging away.
Stay in the fight.
I know, stay in the fight. You know that for sure. But anyways, man, just good to catch up with you again, right? Talk a little bit. You know, you
Yeah.
and I stay in pretty regular contact, which has been great. I really appreciate it and just love what you guys are doing. So catch me up, man. And I want to talk about First Air, but I want you first to tell me this. Chris AZ Rush. Introduce me to this guy.
Oh man, that's that's dear to my heart. He was my first supervisor when I became a controller. So I started off in the Air Force as a security forces guy. So I was people that don't know, is military police, right, on Air Force Base. And my whole plan was, I think I told you before, I was never to stay in the military a long period of time. I wanted to get my 4 years done and go to college and be out of there. But 9/11 happened, and I wanted to go fight. I wanted to do something about what they did. So I cross-trained combat control, and so I became operational. And Chris Rush is my first supervisor at the 321st, which is in England. Super good guy, man. When you looked at him, he's skinny guy. He always had a dip in. His lip was always blue. Always drank Diet Pepsis. He was one of the first guys to go into Afghanistan, Iraq.
One of those early guys.
Yeah, super early guy. Dropped a bunch of ordnance on the enemy. And he took a round in the chest one time. Luckily, he had his plates on, so it saved his life. And by the time he was my supervisor, he taught me everything about warfare, along with the other guys, the senior guys who were on teams. But him and I talked quite a bit. We used to party quite a bit. He was a great guy, man. It's super humble, down to earth, and he had his demons, And looking back now in our culture, we hit the bottle pretty hard, that's just our culture. We get in fights sometimes, and we drink. And looking back now that I'm an older, wiser man, if you will, I kind of look back, and I wish I would have said something, right? Or I kind of felt something was off, but I just didn't. I thought that's just what we did. And 6 months after he retires, he does 20 years, retires, and 6 months later he takes his own life. So it was during COVID, and we couldn't say goodbye to him. We had to wait a whole year. So it just, at the time I was running for Congress, as you were saying. So I knew that there was something we needed to do. And, a couple of months later, after Rush took his life, there was another teammate of mine who was also up there, and he was kind of in the same boat. And I'm glad he reached out, because he was just in a really bad spot. And I talked to him for about 3 or 4 hours that day, and just trying to talk him off the ledge. And that helpless feeling of having your friend, someone someone that you love, man, is at that edge. That was it. I went to bed, and like I say, and 3 or 4 in the morning, I woke up and I did it. And that's the same thing with Congress. There's plenty of people that are like, oh, don't run. You don't know what you're talking about, and money. And same thing with the nonprofit. They're like, there's already one that exists. What are you doing? But there was a gap to be filled, and I did it for them. I love the love of my teammates. So, that's how it was. Task and Purpose did a pretty good article about on First Air and the gala that we just had, and it was strictly out of necessity, man. I never want to. I don't want one of my teammates or my friends, to take their own life because they feel like they're inside that box, and they and they see no other option, right? So I get it. I've been there, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's
like
a tough one, man.
Look, man, you got to do something. You feel so called. You got to do something about it. And, that's why we've just been trying to highlight stories of places like Camp Hope, PTSD Foundation, my friend Chris O'Toole, and the work he was doing to rehabilitate not just fellow soldiers, but guys that serve as SWAT team members, right? The things that they're bottling up and taking home. And when you come off of what was just an intense 20-year stretch, we've unfortunately had to hear stories like Chris's, and they've become too common. And so the collective, I think part of our role, sort of why we started this podcast, why we continue to do is to highlight the stories. Because I think by sharing them, folks can get motivated, want to support, right? So what's the main focus of what you guys with First There are trying to do? Because I know it's not just focused on mental health, but really you want to help folks tackle financial assistance, career assistance. You're helping Gold Star families. So just catch us up on the mission of the organization.
It's the extension of the team room, because that gap that needed to be filled when guys got out, there's wonderful, veteran programs out there and charities and you name it, right? I mean, there's hundreds of them, I'm sure, but no one knows what a combat controller is. And my main goal was to get combat control on the map so people start to I'm not looking for the fame part. I'm looking for the acknowledgement of what our guys, the past, present, and future combat controllers are going to do for our nation. So yeah, it's we started treating guys that need help with resumes or just connections, right? So first, there, as small as we are, we're just connecting people to, hopefully that'll build their network, and then that way they can pay it forward once they make it. Say, hey, First There helped me, so now I'm in a good spot, and I'm gonna help the guys that are coming in or actually getting out, coming into the civilian world. So, yep, we had a gala and we raised some money, and we flew our Gold Star families down, paid for some of their hotels. We've had guys that fell in hard times and substance abuse, and we helped them get caught up on bills. Send them on retreats where guys can go and be with their brothers again and talk and be completely honest about what they're feeling, and it's helped tremendously. So yeah, man, we're slowly getting there.
Yeah. How important is it for those moments, right? You guys serve so close to each other in incredibly high stress environments. And then sometimes there's a tendency to kind of go off in your own, right? Everybody's got their own lives. Maybe they have families. What concerns me the most, and why I think, unfortunately, things like this continue to happen, and there's a lot of factors, but I think a big one is lack of proximity, right? And you can get isolated in those moments. And if you're been used to being in that team and then that's removed, that lack of proximity and purpose, man, that can be a tough thing to overcome.
Yeah, you nailed it. Lack of purpose is the biggest thing for guys, I believe. Even there's some guys that are lucky to get out and had a wife and kid, and they have that continuity when they get out, and it's kind of the same thing, and they land on their job and everything's fine. But for the rest of us, as controllers, we deploy by ourselves, so we're constantly joining other teams. So when you start getting that box of misery or that box of depression or whatever it is, as controllers, I think a lot of us, we're so used to being alone that we isolate and we don't reach out, even though everybody's a phone call away or a click away, on your phone, because we don't want to bother anyone else. We don't want, I think before we didn't want to let our teammates know that we were hurting and that, you were felt a certain way, right? Because if you talked about that, then you couldn't deploy, weapons were taken away, or you're kind of taking yourself out of the fight, which hurts the next guy in line because now they got to cover down, So I think that stigma is changing quite a bit now, especially with all, the years of fighting and the awareness of PTSD and depression and the lack of purpose. And guys are really kind of just coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, man, I've been there. I know what you're feeling. So it has a better platform out there for sure.
Tell me about the piece of advice he gave you once. Pretty quick to the point.
Yeah. We were in a helicopter, and it was my first deployment. And we helicopter lands, and he's helping me offload my bags. And he leans into me so I can hear him, and he goes, "Hey, man, don't suck and don't die. I'll see you in 6 months." So I said, "Okay." And then then he leans in again, and he says, if things get really bad out there, crawl into a ball and a man with a gun will come save you. And then he left. And that's how Rush was, though. He was super funny.
Yeah.
But that was don't suck and don't die. Still part of
pretty good advice.
Yeah. Still use it, man.
That's incredible. I want to read a little bit to honor Chris's legacy.
Sure.
And give a little bit more context. Chelsea Chapman wrote this and read it at a memorial. I just want to read it to you guys because I think it hits the nail on the head as to what Eric's talking about. And if you've not been on a team or been in the military at the level that they have, maybe you don't know what this is like. So I want to read it. It says, if you were in Beaver Creek, Colorado this past weekend, you might have noticed them, a group of striking, loud, well-built men in dark sunglasses and dark suits. The way they constantly ribbed each other and told stories of the past might have you think they were brothers, except for the fact that they all came in different shapes and sizes with different skin tones and varied accents. You would be right, though, because it's true. They are brothers. They are brothers who forged their bonds through the shared experience of preparing for and enduring war. And they had gathered there on a Vale Mountain to honor, celebrate, and grieve one of their own, whom the lasting toll of that war had become too great of a burden to bear. That's what we're talking about, is that burden becomes too great to bear. That's why we got to support organizations like First Air. Guys, listening at home, like, you got to go help support these organizations. And that means give them money. That means find ways to volunteer. So, Eric, tell folks a little bit just about where they can find out more what you guys are doing, right? How they can support the cause, what's coming up.
Sure. They can go to, obviously, use their handy dandy phones and laptops, but it's First There, and it's number one, STTHERE.org. Yeah, and there's different ways. I mean, they can do a simple donation. They can set up for a monthly subscription, and we don't need a whole bunch. It's just give up a cup of coffee a month, or a beer, when you go out to the bar once a month, and that's all. It'll go a long ways. And then also we have a shop now that you can wear some of our gear and merchandise and go out there and rep it, and that way when people ask, we're like, what is that? You can help spread the word about combat control. So yeah, all that, besides taking care of the overhead, it goes back to the teams when guys needs it, and then we have those funds available for them to get help, both for the operator and their family members.
What kind of stuff will they find on the gear store?
Oh man, there's t-shirts, flasks, obviously, something to keep your beverages in incognito, but decanters, there's stickers. Yeah, I think some hoodies
patches?
now that the winners.
You got patches?
No, we don't.
I could use one on this nice black hat. That black and yellow lightning bolt look pretty slick.
Yeah, I can get you a lightning bolt.
We can make that. We can effort that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can make that happen. But yeah, it's just it's mainly t-shirts, and now especially hoodies, right? Because winter's coming. We're actually releasing a new t-shirt either tonight or tomorrow. So that'll be pretty cool. And when we try to keep it a little bit different, where when you look at it from the front, you can't really tell it's a military t-shirt, because I think a lot of them, you can tell right away, like, oh, it's probably a military t-shirt. So that's kind of it'll hopefully bring up a conversation where people see it. They're like, oh, what is that? And whoever's wearing it can talk a little bit about us. So that's kind of my whole goal with it.
Yeah. When you were running for Congress, you talked a little bit about some of the things that happened, but man, I also get the sense, and I just know that you got to meet a lot of people and got to hear from a lot of people in a good way. So how was that part of the experience?
No, that was awesome. It's funny. There's like little camps, right? I was in a race with 7 other people. So, we would go to these town hall meetings, and there would be 7 little battle camps, right? Everybody supporting their own candidate. But the good thing was that at the time, they were obviously I ran on the Republican ticket, so everybody there was pretty much in line with what we believed. But it was just their candidate, right? You got to pick your horse, and it was great, man. It was good to see a lot of patriotic Americans, and I think you also said that at the very beginning. You have both extremes. You have the very left extreme and the very right extreme, and I think most of America is center right and center left, But again, if we could just do away with that and concentrate on being good Americans and good humans, it'd make the world a difference. But the media and sometimes these politicians, that's how they divide us, and people get wrapped up in it, right? Because you have certain beliefs and certain values, and when you hear it pushed down your throat, then you're going to stick up for what you believe. But then that's that division where you can't talk about it the way when we were growing up with our parents. I never cared, and I don't think my parents did either. Who voted? I mean, there's friends still came over and Thanksgivings and all that other stuff. But now it's, families are being divided over it. So
it's crazy, man. We can't be doing that.
It's completely ridiculous, but I get it, man. It's strange times for sure.
My friend Dave Redding compares America to a tent, meaning if you go to like a big party, right, outdoor wedding, they've got one of those big white tents, right, with the silver poles. Everybody's seen them, right? You probably stood inside of them. America's is that tent. And that tent has basically 3 major poles that keep it up. which is the tallest of the three is the one in the middle, right? You're going to have the extremes on the edge so that it can actually be a tent and it can stand up. But if the one in the middle isn't the tallest, it falls in on itself. So
Yeah.
Despite all that stuff, right? Despite all the things that you might see on the news, or God willing, maybe you've tuned some of that stuff out, right? The middle pole of the tent still in our country is still the tallest, right? And so we all got to kind of keep working to get to that middle pole. And look, man, I get it. Sometimes it's not easy, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that pisses me off, man. That that people that I don't agree with do. That I'm like, oh, man, I'm feeling that pull to one side. I got to try. I got to at least try to keep coming back in to fight for them.
Well, there's a book by Trey Gotti who's awesome when he was in the Senate, and I read it. Actually, no, I lied to you. I listened to it because I hate reading, so I listened to it.
You, and
and he said he had his certain views, right? But he said, I'm willing to be convinced, and I think a lot of our friends that maybe are not on the same side that we are. I mean, they're our friends for a reason, because prior to these elections, they were our friends and we didn't really care. But
right.
I've had friends that are on the Democrat side, and I care about them, and I would ask them, like, well, how'd you get to this point? Because I care about you, or you mean something to me. So explain to me how you're getting to that, and I'm willing to be convinced. But a lot of them just couldn't. They would just get angry and shout, or say that Republican Party is racist, or and I was like, well, I'm not a racist, so am I that guy? And so it's on both sides, right? It goes both sides. So if you're not willing to be convinced and listen to the other guy, then it's a waste of time, and you're just going in these crazy circles that you need to get over. So
yep. You got to be able to cast a vision, articulate your point, right? Articulate that vision, try to persuade people you need to, and then empower them to take some sort of action. And I'd make the argument that you also need to be willing to listen too, right? And
listen, you got to do some research, because Americans we're lazy, right? We look at a headline and we're like, oh, that must be it. But no one really reads into it. And the media is just great manipulator, so if you don't know what you're reading and you're just picking up a headline, then I think that's the problem with a lot of people as well. They just read whatever that first two sentences are and they go with it. So
what are you guys hoping for, man, in 23 for First There? What do you hope the impact is, and what can we do to help?
Yeah, so we are planning already the second annual Scarlet Beret Gala. It'll be the 9th of September, San Antonio, Texas. We got a bigger venue this time because the last one got filled up pretty good, and it was the dance floor. Good
problem to have, right?
Yeah, the dance floor was a little small, so this year is it's going to be a little bit bigger, and I think once the tickets go on sale, I'm hoping by March or April, it'll be sold out pretty quick, and I'm super excited. Traction, especially with my teammates and their family members, have supported us and have welcomed us, and they obviously like what we're doing. But yeah, the cause is to continue bring awareness to suicide, mental health, combat control, and honor what these guys have done throughout history. So that's the main goal. And I've always said I don't want to get to a ridiculous level where we lose track of what's the important piece and why I started this. The important part is that cash or that help goes back to the family members. Obviously, there's going to be some expenses that need to be taken care of, but for the most part, I don't want to name any other organizations, but I don't want to be that large with it. The only concern is, when's the next event? How can we cater to these sponsors? And granted, you need sponsors to keep going, but when they lose track of that, then the team guys and the families, end up losing out. So I'll never get that big, and I never see it becoming that anyway. So 23 should be exciting, man. Hopefully, I invited you to the one last time.
I know,
so
I was running
come to this one.
36 miles in the mountains with my friends in a stinky van. You had a way more fun than I did. I heard dance floor. I wasn't doing anything like that.
No, awesome. No, man, it was fun. Yeah, so we'll have this big one coming up on the 9th of September. So it'll be fun.
That's awesome. So First Air Foundation, what is being an air traffic controller in a war zone really like? Because I mean, being a regular air traffic controller's got to be crazy enough, but doing it in the circumstances, and I've often talked about when we told the story of Spanky Peterson and all the efforts it took to rescue Marcus Luttrell during that lone survivor. We talk about moving heaven and earth. You guys are on in some of these instances on the other end of that comms device doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of our pipeline, our training pipeline, is to go through air traffic control school. So that's the thing about combat control. I mean, I can teach anyone how to shoot after, train them, have them for 6, 7 months, and you can become a pretty proficient shooter and do close quarter battles and train that way. But for us, we had to get up at like 4:45 in the morning, go PT, get smoked, basically. That's what it was. And then you get dressed, you run to air traffic control school, and you're there for another 8 hours. And then you get home, got to get your uniform, got to study, and then all over again Monday through Friday, right? And sometimes the weekends, depending on how bad the instructors wanted to punish us. But then when you're out there when you're out there training, you're controlling aircraft from the ground. You don't have a tower, you don't have a radar. It's all visual, right? So VFR they call it. So it's it's intense. And then when you get in a gunfight, you're obviously not landing aircraft unless you're bringing in a medevac. But then you have aircraft. It's called the stack. You have they're just stacked on top of each other, and that you deconflict with altitude. So you're in a gunfight, and you're coordinating how you're going to bring these attack aircraft. And it could be a helicopter, it could be a drone, it could be a fast mover, which is a jet, or a bomber. So you have all these planes up there, and you're responsible for who's flying them, how they're flying, what attack angles are coming, or what attack directions are coming in. And then if you got a medevac, then you got to coordinate how that medevac is going to come in and keep that medevac safe, because they're not armed. So it is. And then you're shooting and moving, right? You're shooting and moving with your team, because you can't just sit back and be like, all right, you guys go.
That's the part to me that just like takes it to a whole nother level is coordinating all that effort while still being in a gunfight.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing, combat controllers, that's what drives me crazy, to be honest with you. I don't know why the Air Force doesn't like to pursue what we've done, the capabilities, because it takes a special person.
I would be telling everybody, you guys are badass.
Yeah, I call it the Sons of Zeus, right? Because there's only a few people that could do that. I mean, I think the average year combat controllers in the Air Force about 300 to 400 total. And you look at our sister services, they're in the thousands, right? Their platoons and their teams are just huge. So the combat controller brings a ton to the fight. And like I said before, and I think I said this when I ran for office, I said the combat controller is the most lethal human weapon system on the battlefield. And that's hands down. And I'll gladly tell anybody that's in the Army and the Navy, it's the fact. It's true. So
my buddy Lowell Copper probably come up here and kick my ass. Maybe those Green Berets and Eddie Penny, sorry, man, and the SEALs, maybe they're just better at telling people. That's what they do.
No, I love it.
I mean, better at telling. They're like, yeah, man, Green Beret, Navy SEAL. And those guys, badass, lethal warriors. Maybe they're just better.
Everybody has their own thing. Yeah, for sure, man. It's just, can't knock the Army or the Navy, right? They've done great marketing and promotion, and their movies were good, right? They had John Wayne for the Green Berets, and then the Charlie Sheen thing for the SEALs, and us. It's just, I don't know what's up with us, but I'm trying to change it, man. So if anybody in Hollywood out there wants to make a movie about combat control, tell them to hit me up. And
get Eric Hohman on the line, get Dan Skidmore on the line. Like, you got some good resources that could help you piece together.
We got plenty of guys that have better war stories than I do, but absolutely, man. It's amazing what combat controllers have done throughout history.
Hey, you talked about getting up at 4:30, getting your ass smoked, and then having to go work a taxing job and train all day. How important is it? How critical actually is that PT first thing in the morning? Could you have imagined gone through that training without getting up and doing that?
No. Obviously your body's your vehicle that's going to carry you in and out of the fight. So you have to stay sharp. And then, I'm sure, like, when you were running in the mountains, after a while, you just kind of become numb to it, right? And you have that muscle memory, and you're an autopilot. But then on the air traffic control or the close air support, the CAS part, you have to be able to think. You got to be shoot, move, and communicate. And then you have the aircraft. It's that fourth dimension where, while your buddies are, either the Army guys or the Navy guys are laying down fire, you're controlling that aircraft, those aircraft, and you're responsible for all those people up there. So no, absolutely not, man. You got to stay in good health, physically and mentally, and then you got to know your stuff. So it's a tremendous job, and that's why the washout rate when I went through was like 85 to 90%. So not too many people can make that reality come true for them. So
Do you ever have a moment where you're looking out there on the battlefield and just knowing what you were about to call in and being like, man, you guys are effed big time?
No, the one feeling that I had was we had a gunship overhead, and we were in a gunfight, and we just couldn't find them, because they're I mean, they're dressed in plain clothes, they'd shoot at us, and they'd run back inside their hut or whatever, and they'd put their gun down, they'd come out on the other side. And so while the aircraft are looking for guys, you're hearing rounds coming at you, but it's difficult. My gunfights were further apart, but luckily we did find one of those guys that was going to shoot an RPG at us, and the Apache caught him, and yeah, it smoked him. So that was a good feeling that the helicopters were able to take care of that for us.
Yeah. He's Eric Hohman. Man, guy's done a lot on behalf of our nation. We're grateful for it, Eric, as always. Man, proud of you for making that run, just throwing yourself out there, right? Getting back in it, good, bad, or indifferent. And, maybe next time, hopefully it comes out on the better side. I get the feeling that there's probably a little bit more in you that you want to accomplish on that front. And then now with First Air Foundation, just take care of your buddies. And then what I really love about it as well is taking care of their families, right? So for the guys
100%.
who didn't get to come home, those families, it's a long journey ahead. And I've spent a lot of time around Gold Star families that have considered it just an honor and a privilege to get to know them. And honestly, man, if anything, just hear their stories. Let them continue to talk about their heroes, because for the rest of the world, unfortunately, for the rest of America, it just sort of fades and goes away. For those families, it never does, right?
That's right. Yeah. Every this last gala we had Sean and Andy Harvell's mom speak, and then this one we're going to have another Gold Star family speak at our event, because you're right. It's not only taking care of the operator, but we got to take care of the family members, especially the surviving ones, because we've put them through hell, and them worrying about us. And when we come home, and we're a little bit different. So yeah, man, it doesn't work without having that whole unit be taken care of.
Yep. Tell us one more time where they can find out more info, support the organization,
Sure.
Buy some merch, all that good stuff.
Yeah. It's First There. So it's the number 1 STTHERE.org. And there's plenty of tabs across there, and there's donation button, shop, and a story about Rush that you read. Mm-hmm. And yeah, man, it's doing really well for its first year. I'm extremely proud of it. We've done really, really good things, and we're going to continue to take care of our boys and our families.
Love it. It's the First There Foundation. Go check them out, guys. Give them some support. He's Eric Hohman. Eric, it's always good, man. Let's catch up in the new year, and we'll talk a little bit more as you get closer to that gala in 23.
Yeah, brother. Stay lethal out there, man. I appreciate you having me.
Always. He's Eric Hohman. I'm Brian Jodis. Don't suck and don't die. That's been this episode of Pick Up the Six podcast.